if you had a question, go ahead.
Well, it's really interesting. It's 26% yes and 34% no. And then Cheryl say want to vote yes, but Firefox would not let me. Well, this is a really interesting result. Now, let me show you something really, really interesting. I have a really nice diagram. I'd like to show it to you. Well, being aware of the need for long-term preservation and also the digital preservation crisis, as you can see from the diagram, there's really a phenomenal growth of open access repository. Now, this diagram actually shows us how fast the growth is. If you look at the year 1990, there's only 25 repository. Now, if you look at 2006, now it has more than 350 repository. This morning, I actually Googled the term open access repository. It come up with more than 1,000 hits. So it's pretty sure that right now we'll probably have more than 1,000 open access repository around the world. So the goal is really phenomenal, and this is the direction we are going, how we could effectively preserve our digital objects. Now we'll talk a little bit about what is an open access repository. Then the question is, what are some of the characteristics and attributes of a repository? Now there are a number of special attributes. The first one is it is a web-based repository of scholarly material. So it provides 24/7 access through the World Wide Web. And second characteristic is it is institutionally defined as opposed to a subject-based repository. Now let me show you what a subject-based repository looks like. So this is what a subject-based repository looks like. You can see the repository is organized around an LC subject heading. So it shows you a different subject heading. Now I'd like to show you what other approach is, or what other model is. At Athabasca University, we use a community approach. It's institutionally defined. So right now we're in Athabasca University AU space, our open access repository. As you can see, this is different from the University of Access. It's not organized around subject areas. It's all organized around a community model corresponding to the administrative and academic units such as school and center. And this is more flexible and versatile than the subject-based repository. Another attribute is this is cumulative and perpetual, including a collection of records. Most important of all is open access. It is interoperable, with other repository. In other words, it will allow you to search across different repository. If you're using an OAI, the Open Archive Initiative software, and it's also part of the scholarly communication. It's an effective way to collect, store, and disseminate research information. Now, the next question is, how do we make a good use of an open access repository? What are some of the potential application and use? Well, you can use it in many ways. It's only limited by your own imagination. First, it can be used to facilitate scholarly communication. And second is, you can use it to publish your open access journal, or even use it for electronic portfolio, allow faculty and students to post their research profile online using the open access repository. It can support curriculum development, open access archive, and repository is a good way to post a learning object. It could support collection management, such as setting up your electronic feces online using the repository, long-term preservation, and knowledge management. Most important of all is support the 3 O. The first O is open access, the second O is open source, and finally is open standard. Now I would like to share a really interesting article with you. The article is written by a system librarian called Edward M. Corrado, and in his article he talks about the importance of the 3O to the library, and he mentioned about like there are 3 basic benefits of this model, including lower cost and greater accessibilities, and also provide better prospect for long-term preservation and scholarly work. Now, in his conclusion, Corrado argued that only by supporting open access, open source, and open standards, we can ensure that the current and future user will have easy and comprehensive to scholarly research. So this is a really good article. I highly recommend. It's food for thought. Now I'd like to talk a little bit about our repository, the AU space. So what are some of the goals and objectives of our open access repository and archive? First of all, the repository was established 5 years ago in the year 2004. There are 2 major goals. The first goal is to address the issue of the digital preservation crisis and to preserve our scholarly material. The second is to support and actualize our own AU open access research policy. So I will talk a little bit about the AU access research policy in the later part of my presentation. Now, some of the specific objectives including self-promotion, service to the faculty in making the publication more available to outside, giving us, the library staff, opportunity to work with the research staff, to integrate the technology with our library service. Most important of all is it encourages open access. Now I would like to share an interesting article with you. The article is written by a really famous open access lawyer, Michael Geese. Believe it or not, all the wonderful open access effort has been noted outside our institution. Now, and Michael maintained that Athabasca University is the first as you can see, Athabasca University is the first or sole Canadian institution to establish both a repository and a policy requesting the faculty submitting electronic copies of all publication. So AU, we have a strong commitment to open access, and this is what the essence of our open access research policy is about. Now I'd like to talk a little bit about what is our open access research policy. So what is the AU Open Access Research Policy? Before I talk about our policy, let's do another exercise. Now, can anyone, or I would like to know how many of you have an open access research policy at your institution. Same thing, if you have a policy, please go and click the green check mark. If you don't, please go and click the red X, and our facilitator will do the counting for us. Okay, Edith, the question is, how many of you have an open access research policy at your institution? If you do, please go and check the green check mark. If you don't, go and click the red X. That's my question. Okay, Lynn have some interesting result. 20% no and 16% yes. Well, that's not too bad. It looked like this is direction everybody is going, is to support an open access at the institution by establish a policy. Or they're unsure about 54%.